Hola, boa noite. Carl Munson here with my Tuesday co-host, Dona Jacqueline, for Portuguese Positive News. That's what we do from 10 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. And very glad to have your company to consider what positive news or silver linings there may be around at the moment. And there are some for sure, but that's I think it would be a little bit too much on the Pollyanna side to not also acknowledge that we are going through some rather challenging and difficult times at the moment. So what's on my screen is what's on your mind. Feel free to call actually tonight or say in the comments. This is a WhatsApp number, Portuguese code 351-913-590-303. Good evening to you, grandmother of our community, Dona Jacqueline. How are you?
I'm actually quite well, really. I have my ups and downs health-wise, but I'm alive and life goes on. And yes, there are difficulties, but as you were speaking, I was just thinking, well, it's what we do with them. It's always what we do with the circumstances that are around us. And yes, there are some things we talked about last week about thinking for ourselves a bit more and not perhaps just listening all the time acceptingly to the media and anybody else who tries to sort of control the way we think, because we do have control of that ourselves, and we can get depressed. But I think most crises can also be, if there's anything positive in a crisis, is that you can dig your way out of it and you can get creative in it. And things that I've said before, really, that there are things that we can do. And I think it's a bit like children exercising, you know.
Tell me more.
We don't know what we. Well, children have to learn by falling over and
Yes,
hurting themselves and struggling. You know, you just watch a young baby and it starts flapping its arms, or he or she starts flapping their arms and legs, but eventually it gets into a sort of frustration. And I was watching a little girl who was just learning how to walk, and she's very determined to reach things. It's because she wants to reach something, and that there's obstacles in her way, in her physical body, but she wants to explore. And maybe we should think of it much more like that.
Yes, and that we don't grow out of that habit.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good advice to us grown-ups, or so-called grown-ups. We're getting a few comments coming in. This is the Portugal show, where we especially reach out across the Atlantic to our American, North and South American. We don't have many South Americans joining us so far, but you know the offer's there, reaching out across the Atlantic to those people who are interested in life in Portugal. And Edgar Ferreira, which is a name I don't think I'm familiar with. Maybe we've spoken once or twice before. You can tell me if not, Edgar. But a few question marks for us. They're wondering, I think, what on earth is going on here. But like I said before, Edgar, ordinarily we scan the news for positive news of a Portuguese flavour, and it's a little bit hard to come by at the moment because we're quite preoccupied with the pandemic. I'm sure it's out there, and if you've come across a positive news story that you wish to share with us, please do. And those question marks have eventually transformed into an hola. So hola, boa noite, or boa tarde to you, Edgar, depending on what time zone you're in. We might have a look at the weather here, just to let everybody know what the weather's like over here in Portugal, compared to people like Eric J, who's watching on YouTube. We're going out on YouTube for the first time, Dona Jacqueline, and that's good evening. Yeah, we're going out on YouTube, which is very exciting, and I think it tends to attract a different kind of audience, or complements our existing audience anyway. So yeah, good evening from Charlotte, North Carolina. Exciting week in America, isn't it? Only a week to go until the results really start coming in, I think, and it's looking like well, we're going to find out who the Does the American president still call himself the leader of the free world, I wonder? But anyway, great to have your company, Eric J. We will be doing some American election coverage, and I'm hoping you'll be part of that, Donna Jacqueline, as well, next Tuesday night in this slot, because it's going to be an exciting day next Tuesday. Yeah. And also from what is it about North Carolina? So many friends over there. Dona Jacqueline and Carl from Lauren and Andrew over there. Great to hear from you guys as well. And thank you for joining us. And one thing I think we should clear up, I think, is me errantly calling you an agony aunt. And you know, very purposefully calling you the grandmother of the community. So after we've said hello to Steve Welton, who's saying good evening from Chicago, where we've had snow for the last couple of days. I guess it's fun for the first day, isn't it, Steve? Then it becomes a bit wearing. But yeah, keep warm over there in Chicago, my friend. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yes, agony aunt. We won't be doing that anymore, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Why is that?
Yes, well, as I said, I'm neither in agony nor in a position to help people in agony. So.
Right.
Yeah. I hope I can lift up a few people, but
well, it has been observed that you do that, and you're a calming
spiritual.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I was just saying it's been observed that you are a calming presence. Clearly, I talk too fast and say too much, and you are much more measured, I think, and calm in your communication. That's why I interrupted you then, I think. And I think, you know, this idea of you being the grandmother of our community, I think is really helpful and useful. And I'm hoping people can call upon you because, you know, this overused word of the moment, unprecedented times. Have you in your lifetime experienced anything quite like what's going on in the world at the moment?
No, but I've experienced as a young child the tail end of the war, where we were separated as a family. My father was left in Egypt and my mother and I were evacuated to South Africa. And then I experienced traveling in one of those wartime convoys, which I don't know if there's anybody who knows what I'm talking about, but where the ships were sent out in large ships in numbers with escorts of destroyers on either side of them.
Really?
And I suppose we came back with the fleet of about 20 or 30 ships from South Africa, actually via South America, which is a very long way round.
Sure.
But most of the convoy was lost and blown up. And I also had quite a scary, what would have been a scary experience, which was turned out to be by the naval officers and things that were in charge of us, because we were split up so that, and we had to do lifeboat drill every day.
Did you?
And these men were absolutely marvelous, who looked after the children, because they, as much as they could, made a game of it all. And we were in a hurricane storm and various things like that. And actually, I love storms. And I'm sure it's to do with these naval people, you know, officers, that made it so much fun. And, you know, trying to get from down the gangways and things was like going on one of these water slides. That's what they made it feel like for us.
Wow.
But then we arrived in London and we had nowhere to go, and we were living on the underground station. And I just think about you know, I was too young to be really in a place of having to be responsible for anybody, but my parents went through hell. Yeah. And those wartime years, I think, were horrific. I think there's a difference in the virus, and it's like a sort of unseen enemy. You know, you can't fire at it or zap it with something. But you know, those were terrifying times for people.
When was that, Jacqueline? So what year would that have been?
I'm trying to think of the year, but I'm 82, nearly 83, and so I must have been 5 or 6 years old. But I have very vivid memories, so there must have been quite a lot of stuff happening.
And you say you lived in the underground station?
Well, most people were living in the underground in London because it was like a huge air raid shelter.
Yes, yeah.
And then we were moved to Ireland. So we lived for a while. I mean, this was, I think I explained earlier on too, that I did go through some particular time when I was actually rather abandoned by my parents. But at that time, you know, we never really knew where we would be. Amazing. And we got sent to Northern Ireland. And that was nothing but trouble because we lived in Belfast. And that was as the years were when Protestants and Catholics would live on one side of the street opposite each other, and not mix and go to different schools and be always fighting each other. So,
and you were taken to be in the middle of that as a refuge.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So clearly there's a parallel in terms of adversity, but like you and I mean, what a horrific situation for a small child to be in. You know, on a convoy of ships, being escorted by military boats, military ships, and then ending up in a conflict within a conflict in Belfast, where of course they built the Titanic. So presumably the Germans were trying to bomb the shipyards of Belfast as well. If they were still building boats at that time, which I believe they were.
Yes.
Wow, okay. And a great uncertainty, presumably, a bit like now. That's the other parallel, isn't it? The uncertainty.
Yes, but the thing for me was what people did with that.
Yes, tell me. Again,
because I'm not at all afraid of the sea. And in fact, I went on it's the only time my husband and I really had a big holiday. We went on a cruise ship to go to Australia, and we got caught up in a hurricane, and I thought it was wonderful. But that's what I was trying to say earlier. Those sailors made that experience for me one of fun.
Yes.
And different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And maybe that rubbed off then, I don't know, but I just think whatever adversity there is, there's also huge opportunity.
Yes. And you see that now in these times, in the times of the pandemic, and this unusual curveball that has landed on our laps in 2020?
Well, I get irritated by some of the regulations and do wonder what on earth we're being told and why, and whether it does any good. And a lot of it doesn't make sense to me, but yes, I do. And I think, you know, I've met so many different people during this time.
Yes.
And my life in Portugal after my husband died was quite lonely and very isolated. So I'd been in sort of lockdown because of physical disabilities and various things for about 8 years. But what happened with COVID was lots of people ended up, as we are, online talking to each other. And the community of people that I knew and have grown to care for and care for me has grown hugely.
Amazing.
And the Expats Portugal being one of them. I mean, it's been marvellous. They've been a marvellous strength to me.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Well, and that's why you're here tonight, because you do have this incredible life of experience. You are the grandmother of our community. So if it's our kind of pastoral night on a Tuesday, we're looking for the positives and the pastoral element of helping you out. You've seen some of the adversity Jacqueline's been through, not let alone the early years of being in the tail end of the Second World War there, but struggling as an expat in Portugal as well, and making sense of the current experience of being an expat in Portugal right now. It's all there for us to talk about tonight on the Portugal show, and of course answering your other questions. So, you know, if you want to open up a bit and share what's on your mind, if you want to call the studio, 913-590-303, and we'll have a chat with you and see what we can do to help. So call upon Dona Jacqueline here if there's anything troubling you or you'd like a little bit of help with. It's an unusual situation, I think, to have this. That's why I was using the kind of agony aunt idea, because there used to be phone-ins, didn't there, and newspaper columns and stuff where you would share your difficulties. This is an entirely different order, folks. This is, as you can see, there, a lifetime of experience and wisdom from Jacqueline that can be shared with you if you so wish. And so we've got a few hellos, a bit of YouTube type, almost Twitterish. Flaming, I think I'm going to call it, ranting possibly, but let's see where this goes. Hello from Susan. Hi, Susan in Savannah, Georgia. Great to hear from you tonight. Maybe you'll join us for our election coverage next Tuesday and Wednesday in this time slot. So from 10, and I haven't asked you yet, Jacqueline, if you're happy with the flavor of the American election from 10 onwards next Tuesday, where we look at how the world might be shaping up under whichever president is going to get in, alongside a few men from the expat man cave, some of them Americans, and having a bit of a chat about that. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I am indeed. I've always had America on my heart. I have lots of friends in America.
Yeah, an amazing country.
And I pray for the governments there and what's happening, and I've hated to see all this sort of mudslinging that goes on between them. That seems to be another thing that's present in our life very much at the moment, is everybody blaming everybody else for everything. And maybe it's just a way to avoid personal responsibility.
Could be.
The thing for me that's strongest, of course, is my faith in God, and how I deal with life comes from the strength that I get from Him. The personal relationship I have. So that's where it comes from with me mostly.
Wonderful, wonderful. Responding to my question, does the President of the United States still call themselves, or are they referred to as the leader of the free world? USA leading the world now, says Edgar. Lots of the question marks have changed to exclamation marks. It must be a joke. They cannot deal with internal problems. The more in the world, I guess. Yeah, let alone the rest of the world. So I think we get a sense of how Edgar's feeling tonight in relation to the American politics situation. Good evening from Dominique. How are you, Dominique? Great to have your company tonight. Lovely to hear from you. Susan's saying this is something we can help with tonight. We're happy to go where your questions take us. We're trying to decide between 3 cities in Portugal. My husband, my mother, age 80, and I hope to have our visas by February. So fingers crossed. Boa sorte, as we say in Portugal. Good luck to you with that process, Susan. The cities are Aveiro, Tavira, and Tamar. 3 very fine cities. Expats who are watching tonight, who've got something to say, please chip in and let's help Susan tonight with this decision-making process. Any info on those cities for expats would be appreciated. I'm definitely going to have a little go at that for sure. You may have something to add to that as well, Donna Jacqueline. Dennis says she is right. I think this is a bit of a comedy quip here. She's right in saying sailors are doing it in a different way. Ha ha. The UK Navy made things difficult in easy, says Edgar, who seems pretty angry tonight, but we'll see if we can send some calming positive vibes your way tonight, Edgar. Wonderful here. The positivity out of COVID, says Dominique. Thank you for sharing that, Jacqueline. Somebody's got to, right, Dominique? And yeah, thank you for that reminder, Jacqueline, that yeah, these things can be reframed, even though we would appear to be right up against it. And it's a very difficult time for a lot of people. And Lauren saying, bringing wine to the election coverage. That's a very good idea, Lauren.
Yes,
you refer to it as wine o'clock, don't you, Jacqueline?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so wine o'clock.
We used to have wine o'clock, my husband and I, which was just before dinner. Usually when we were cooking dinner, we'd have a glass of wine.
Well, certainly by 10 o'clock next Tuesday when we start, and 10 o'clock on Wednesday, I think that's certainly wine o'clock. So it will be a mix-up of our various shows that we do. It will be the Portuguese positive news show with a little bit of expat man cave with some of the American friends we've got, and let's bring the wine club into it as well, as you quite rightly point out there, Laura. And we might go beyond our 11 o'clock threshold and just see. We will be watching ourselves the coverage and just doing a bit of political punditry. Not that we have any authority to do that, of course. It's just a load of opinions. But I think it will still be entertaining nonetheless. And what will be great, we'll be connecting with real life Americans, our friends from the Expat Man Cave, the likes of Charles and Chris, who've been such great fun to meet actually in the last few weeks in our brotherly exchange that we have on a Friday night from 10 o'clock. Sort of blokish humor. But it's like being in a pub without having to go to the pub together, and encouraging people to come over here to Portugal. Lauren says, Jacqueline, I love the wine o'clock idea. The great thing about it, of course, is you can decide for yourself when wine o'clock is, can't you?
Exactly.
It's where the hands on the bottle opener are.
Could be.
Eric's right all over our selection for this Thursday. Now, I thought this was going to be easy. Matthias Rose is my selection for this Thursday night at 9 o'clock. And Eric can't find it. Eric can't find the Matthias in that part of North Carolina. So I'm sorry to hear that. I thought Matthias, given that the Queen of England drinks it and that Saddam Hussein used to drink it and that Jimi Hendrix was spotted drinking it, you could find it all over the world. But I'm sorry to hear that, Eric. And if you can't get the bottle, you won't be able to make a little table lamp afterwards. Do you remember those in the 70s, Jacqueline? The table lamps made from bottles of and Matthias.
I think I probably made one, actually.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And, but I used to love the bottles, the shape of the bottle.
Well, here it is.
And the colour.
It's I'm going to share it on the screen now. This is Thursday night's wine club selection. It's not this actual bottle anymore. That's what it used to look like, and that's the one that you're referring to, isn't it, Jacqueline? Yeah. Isn't that a beauty?
Yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and people, as you can see there, would put a light fitting in it and then make a I don't know. That looks like a homemade lampshade as well. Goodness only knows what that's made out of. Something flame retardant, hopefully. But the bottle has changed. It's now clear and it shows off the rosé rightly and understandably. Why have a rosé wine and then put it in a green bottle? I guess that was to keep it, wasn't it? To keep it fresh and right. But they've obviously put enough additives and preservatives in it now so that it can be put in a clear bottle. Okay, so that's Thursday night. Do join us for that. So yes, on places to settle. Let's see if we can help Susan here. On places to settle, says Steve. We've been looking at Coimbra, Porto, and Aveiro at this point. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Fantastic. Do you have anything to say on those, Jacqueline, or did you just come to a certain part of Portugal and stay there?
More or less, yes. Although I'd love to do a tour of Portugal, and I'm going to find a way before I leave this planet. I'm going to find a way of touring Portugal.
Okay, let's buy a bus and do it.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it?
I'll drive the bus. It'll be like summer holiday with Cliff Richard and Una Stubbs. And we'll have a big bus. Maybe we'll get a London double-decker and we'll convert it for the purpose, and we'll go touring around Portugal. That would be such a great thing. It'd make a new movie out of that, I think. But Aveiro is your common city there of choice between you, Steve, and Susan. I live in the district of Aveiro. It takes me about 30 or 40 minutes to get to Aveiro. Some call it the Venice of Portugal because it has some canals. I've also referred to it as the Chicago of Portugal because it can be very windy. It's a beautiful city. It really is. It has glorious, very quaint, picturesque beaches. They are a drive away because Aveiro is set back from the salt lakes. It's not actually on the coast. But it does have a coastal port, but you have to go some way to get to its beaches or the beaches associated with it. But it's great. It's got a university. It's got loads of amenities, everything you'd expect from a modern Portuguese city. And it does have a little bit of a cachet at the moment. Very nice to walk around the quay. You get that academic sort of cosmopolitan buzz because of the university. Great city. Weather-wise, I guess is a key consideration. Can be a bit damp and windy. So where Susan was talking about Tavira, it's going to be a lot warmer in Tavira if you stay down south. And equally, Susan, Tomar in central Portugal is some way inland, a long way from the sea and beaches. And you have that solarization effect where it's very warm in Tomar. It can get into the 40s in Tomar. It's very warm and dry. But what a beautiful city that is, made famous by the Templar Knights. An incredible historical place is Tomar, surrounded by other wonderful places like Dornesh, which is a beautiful sort of spiritual little place, actually, with a wonderful lake. So not just Tomar, but the surrounding areas of Tomar are wonderful, and you're very well placed in central Portugal there. Tavira, I don't know so much about. That's my sort of weak spot with Portugal. I have been down south, but I haven't spent much time down there as much as I'd like to. But very hot indeed. And I favour myself being a bit further north. I think Aveiro is about as far north as I'd want to go, because then it gets really cool and windy as you go up beyond Aveiro and into the sort of, the granite highlands and the green coast, Costa Verde of Portugal. But, those are all great. And I think the key determinants there will be what sort of weather your husband and your mother want to put up with and manage. And a key question I always ask people when they're deciding where to stay in Portugal is, do you want the problem of keeping warm or do you want the problem of cooling down? Because that will really help you determine where you want to be in this wonderful country. Your other choice, Steve, Porto, fabulous place, as you will see from the backdrop behind me. That's a night shot of Porto, absolutely wonderful. But for me, if I had to choose between Coimbra, Porto, and Aveiro, I would choose Coimbra. I just got back from there earlier on tonight. It is a beautiful city. I guess the principal academic city. I guess some people in Lisbon wouldn't like me saying that, but I think it's like the Oxford or Cambridge from where I'm from in the UK of Portugal. It has that wonderful academic cosmopolitan buzz that Aveiro has, but even more so. And more dramatic. It's not by the sea. It's not flat. There is a lot of elevation and interest and intrigue in Coimbra. And again, you're centrally placed, and you can go all over the rest of the country from that wonderful central position that Coimbra enjoys. Really wonderful historical city as well, and the best of New Portugal as well. I don't know if you would add to that, Jacqueline, or if you want to tell us about because you're in the Silver Coast, aren't you?
Yes, this is a lovely area too, but it's very damp.
Okay.
And, I think that, again, too, if people have health problems or breathing problems, it's probably better to go somewhere a lot drier than it is here. But I did love Coimbra. I have been to Coimbra and I loved it. And I have also been to Tomar. But beyond there, is it Zaire?
Yes, Zaire. That's right.
And the countryside there is absolutely wonderful, but there are some places where it's stunning looking down, along the rivers, and that's being developed much more now than it was when I went there, when I first came to Portugal. But I think Coimbra is a very interesting city,
Yeah.
And it's there they've got the chained library, isn't it, too? One of the big chained libraries of the world.
I didn't know that. No, I that would make complete sense given its academic significance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the, up on that plateau where there's all these academic buildings, which is
Yes. Yeah.
a lovely. It's almost like a runway.
Yes, it is, isn't it? A helipad.
But again, you can look from there down by, down to the river, and it's got that mixture of senses of like you find in Oxford.
Yeah.
And Cambridge university cities have got something about them which is very special. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, and Coimbra's definitely got that. And the black capes that the students wear, very romantic and atmospheric. And that's what J.K. Rowling was apparently, and she spent some time in Portugal and enjoyed seeing the capes on the students probably in Porto, Lisboa, and Coimbra, because they look very similar in the university uniforms that they have. It's amazing seeing them. I've seen them in the early hours of a Sunday morning, coming home from a party on a cool Sunday morning, probably not slept, and that wonderful thick woolen black cape offers them so much comfort in advance of the hangover that they're inevitably about to experience on that Sunday. But wonderful cities, all of those. So we're not much help in helping you differentiate. Susan goes on to ask, do they all have access to hospitals, doctors for my mum? Absolutely, Susan. All of those modern cities. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to know what you're used to, and to make a comparison for you. But I would, certainly if you choose Coimbra or Porto and Aveiro, no problem with hospitals. And there's a huge hospital in Tamar as well. But it's not as big a city or as sprawling. So, and the population I think is much smaller than all of the other places you mentioned there. So, obviously the bigger the population, the better those sorts of facilities tend to be. So, I think we're kind of saying Coimbra, aren't we? In possibly, although Susan doesn't ask for Coimbra, she's Tavira, Tamar, and Aveiro. Of those three, Susan, my wife would live in Tamar. Of those three, for sure, and I wouldn't be unhappy to be wandering the streets of Tamar. Really love that town city. It's fantastic, and it's on the up as well. It really is. All sorts of different properties there to choose from, and you don't have to live in the city. You can live a little bit out and enjoy the wonderful scenery that Jacqueline was talking about there. So yeah, you'll be all right for hospitals and doctors for Mum. Tell us Mum's name and we'll say hello to her. One of the most beautiful libraries around the world is the University of Coimbra Library. I think that's the one you're referring to, Jacqueline, right?
Yes, I was.
I'm thinking we have a real Portuguese person among us. It's all very well us expats giving advice, but Maria, if you've got more to say about those places, Coimbra, Porto, Aveiro, Tavira, and Tamar, please speak freely. I would like to think you are among friends here. And I think, it's Lorraine. So Mum is Lorraine. Good evening to you, or afternoon, it probably is for you, Lorraine. And thank you so much, Susan, for asking that question and giving us an opportunity to answer it. And like I said, all of you folks, you expats who are lurking in the community here watching tonight, do chip in, even ring in if you want to. 913-590-303. This is the Portuguese positive news slot that we do on a Tuesday night, looking for the silver linings, reframing the struggle of the moment. We did talk briefly about the comparison, didn't we? If you were talking about World War II, because it struck me that I when people talk about unprecedented, Jacqueline, I think it is a fair word to use, even though it's overused. This is such an unusual and trying time for people, and you're here to help us with that.
Well, I mean, I obviously have not from personal experience, but our communities have survived the plague, the Great Plague, the what was it, the Spanish flu?
Yeah,
wiped out so many people, and we didn't have these draconian measures put in them.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a worse thing or not. where it's just a bit more unknown.
Yeah, and it strikes me that there is a change of atmosphere. I mean, in many places all over the world. I mean, this is the Portugal show, so we talk specifically about, or we focus on Portugal, and the atmosphere is changing here, I think, because it's been going on for many months now, and the measures seem to be becoming more and more restrictive. That does something to people, doesn't it? For some people, it will be, there'll be all sorts of human responses to that, won't there? Like, okay, I'll just do, I'm scared and I'll just do whatever I need to do. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And we also have a growing dissent, I think, among some people as well, that actually this bunch of measures and restrictions doesn't really make a lot of sense. And that's just not Portugal. That's all over the world, I think, in the way that respective governments have been dealing with it. And that brings out something else. That brings out frustration for people as well. And I know one of the things we've talked about before is taking more personal responsibility, which is a bit difficult, isn't it? If you're just, having lots of external measures put upon you, how do you counter that with a large dose of personal responsibility? But we seem to be at some sort of crossroads of, like, it can't, or a recognition. This is, to me, this is one of the dawning recognitions for people, and it will be for people in America who are watching this show tonight. It's like, when can I come to the country? And this can't go on, can it? It can't keep going on like this into lockdown and restriction and the movement being forbidden. At some point, we do have to open things back up again. And no, I don't know if anyone's really, if anyone really knows what to say about that at the moment. What's your view on that?
Well, I do actually seem to think that I'm not necessarily talking about Portugal now, which maybe is not on this show, but I had a conversation with my daughter in the UK, or one of my daughters. I've got 3 daughters in the UK, and she was saying that the supermarkets where she is, this is in Wales actually, have restricted what people can buy.
Yeah.
And the reason doesn't seem to have anything to do with COVID whatsoever. I just don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
And so they're not selling, the supermarkets have been instructed to cover up their electrical goods, their clothes department, their toy department, and their sanitary ware department, which is like sort of...
It's kind of essential, right? A bit described by some as non-essential. It's ridiculous, wasn't it?
Well, I just don't see, I find that must be, well, it's just so confusing, and very, very frustrating for people.
Yes.
My daughter lives in a part of Wales which I think is very small, and they're restricted. So they've now got border control on where they are, so they can't travel from one area to another. And they've only got 5 miles in each direction before they hit the border.
Wow. And what sort of life is that? Because that's the other thing we need to recognize or discuss, isn't it? Is when do the measures that are being used to manage the pandemic become worse than the pandemic itself? And for some people, that's already happened, isn't it? For many people, that's already happened.
Yeah.
And if we do get to that point, what can be done about it? And I know people in the UK are demanding some sort of, I think roadmap is a word that's used often, isn't it? Demanding a roadmap from Boris. Like, what's the way out of this? And at some point, I suppose politicians will have to say, well, this can't go on forever. It can't, can it? You can't keep locking the world down, society down, because it's already caused enough devastation and chaos, and we don't know the full results of that yet. But do you think there'll be a situation where there'll be an agreement with government? So we say that, okay, well, at a certain point we have to unlock, and we have to open up, and we have to face the consequences of that together. And you people as voters and the citizens are going to have to take responsibility for that. You can't just blame us for everything, as attractive as that might be. And we perhaps will move to a point. I mean, no one's thinking that far ahead, are they? We're looking. No one, I don't think, really thought Christmas was going to be like it's going to be. Everything is the focus is on this week, isn't it? And maybe the next step. And then suddenly we've got Christmas ahead of us, haven't we? And it's looking like a pretty grim Christmas for a lot of people, in as much as it's not like the one they're used to. And as you say, obviously you can make it whatever you want it to be. That's another matter altogether. But there doesn't seem to be a longer term vision of like, well, okay, by the time this gets to mid 2021, we just have to unlock and find a way of facing the consequences together. I don't hear a strategy like that. Have you heard that anywhere?
I haven't heard that anywhere. I'm almost afraid to say too much about it, Carl, because I've been doing a lot of investigation and I haven't liked what I've found.
Okay.
And I think it's going to get worse.
Right.
And I do question the motives of quite a lot of systems of government that we've got now, because of the more and more control. And I'm not even saying, I'm not saying it's deliberate, but I don't necessarily think that it is based on facts. And there are places that you can go and you can find out the statistics, of the numbers of death and things like that. Actually, just statistics. They're telling a very strange story in that much as COVID deaths are sort of going up and up, but flu deaths and heart problem deaths and cancer deaths and things are going down and down and down. Well, that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, and most of the reporting is about cases, isn't it? The two things that are causing alarm, and understandably to an extent, certainly with ICU, with intensive care units, we can see that those are going to capacity, which they probably would do anyway at this time of year. But that's being firmly highlighted as a situation, and also the massive amount of positive tests. Now we never do that for any other kind of. We don't share daily test results, do we, for any other condition? We're not used to that. So obviously it's going to be very shocking to people. But you're absolutely right. Surplus deaths and deaths, and I can blow the trumpet for Portugal with this. In terms of the number of deaths per million, Portugal rates really well in terms of how it's handled the pandemic. We're at 40th or 41st in the world. If you look at the death statistics rather than cases or blockages in intensive care units. I do want to keep talking about this, but I feel the need to share a little bit more about Coimbra. Let's come back to that in just a moment. Susan is grateful for our...
Not to go there at the moment, so...
No, I'm happy to talk about it because I'm not keen on elephants in the room. This is the Portuguese Positive News Hour, but it's pointless it being a sort of Pollyanna thing. And at the moment, it's funny how positive news is framed because the big oil company Galp have shut down production facilities. Now, in a different frame and a different context, it would be great that a big fossil fuel company is closing its operations down. But in this frame, in this context, it's not a good thing. It's a massive blow to the economy as we know it, and people are losing their jobs. So, one person's positive news is another person's disaster, isn't it? Certainly if you've got a job with Galp and your Matosinhos refinery has been closed down for the rest of the year, that's not positive news at all. So, I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about this, and I don't want us to not be facing up to the full effects of what the pandemic's doing to society. But at the same time, I think we should talk about a bigger picture so that we can find something useful as a way forward and some positives within it. So I'm sort of redefining Pollyanna positive news into like practical positive news, the sort of thing you're talking about. It's how we see things and how we take responsibility for things that seems to be important. And that's a sentiment echoed by Eric. But accepting personal responsibility is the key. The big question there, of course, is how do you do that in a society where people expect the government to tell them what to do? A little bit more from Coimbra. Maria, thank you so much for your help with making Coimbra our top tip for the evening. Coimbra is the city of the students, first capital of Portugal. Actually, our first kings are buried there. It's a city with about 143,000 inhabitants, counting the outskirts. Yeah, drove around it tonight, going to the legendary Leroy Merlin, where if you're doing your house up, you'll be going to Leroy Merlin from time to time. I love driving around Coimbra. Beautiful bridges, the view across the river, absolutely fantastic. Mondego River, isn't it? And the river beach that I discovered a couple of weeks ago, just 10 minutes out of town. Absolutely amazing. What's that called? Not Penamacor. I'm sure Maria will be able to help us with that. But a fabulous river beach, just not far from the city. And Maria goes on to say, Coimbra has a lively academic life. Coimbra University is the first university of Portugal, the only state university in Portugal until 1910. Because of that, there are a lot of academic traditions. And between you and me, Maria, is it also the heart of Fado? I know Lisbon people like to think of the Fado capital being Lisbon, but that's actually Coimbra, isn't it? Or are they two different types? You can tell me. Edgar, I imagined he was in America, but I think he's a Portuguese person living in Portugal. We will not do what the Welsh did. I think I know what you mean. Yes, accepting personal responsibility is the key, says Eric J. In Portugal, there was news that the Welsh are without food due to Brexit. That was the 8 o'clock news stuff. I don't think it's Brexit yet that people were without food. It may be because of these silly supermarket restrictions and border controls, Edgar. But thank you for your contributions tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm sorry, but they are trying to save your life, says Susan. This is, that's an understandable sentiment. And I'm taking it you're referring to governments and the restrictions, Susan. But, if that's the case, and if that's what is to be happening, how long would you, you want to come to Portugal? So it's an interesting, isn't it? The measures that are there to save our lives could be there for a very long time. How would you come to Portugal if it doesn't open up? So presumably you're hoping for the harsh measures to flatten the curves and to kick the virus into touch and for us to feel safe to travel again. It presumably is your method. But the way some people are talking is that the lockdown after lockdown after lockdown. What other considerations might there be, I guess, is the question I'm asking tonight. Wales is a tough place. Lots of people grow their own food. Right on. Unix Guru, thank you very much for that contribution. Maria adding here for you, Susan, Aveiro is a lovely city with its water canals and the typical boats. Yes, and they very noisy, the boats in Aveiro, aren't they? Obviously, the Ovish Molish pastries as well that we've talked about on the show. Nice buildings with tiles. Nice place with about 70,000 inhabitants, a modern university, very close to the ocean, and you can feel the connection of the economy with the sea. Yes, so the port is very important there, although it's not. Aveiro doesn't sit right on the sea as in terms of the city. A more industrial city compared to Coimbra. It's worth to stop in Costa Nova with its the candy stripe houses in Costa Nova, and Barra, I think, is the other town, isn't it, next door to Costa Nova. Thank you so much, Maria. Really appreciate your input tonight. Susan, we have seen what happens here in the US when people refuse to lock down and wear masks. Yeah, I totally get it, Susan.
Absolutely true. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's why I don't want to, go into places where I'm not certain about the facts or anything. I know that we can all think for ourselves, and that's okay. And sometimes we have to make personal decisions that perhaps disagree with governments. But I do totally agree with Susan that people generally in governments are trying their best to protect us and save lives, and that we have got to have respect for governments, because anarchy is just an awful, awful situation to be in, which is what is beginning to happen in America. And I find that far more frightening than COVID or anything else.
Indeed, indeed. Okay. Steve, hey, Steve, obrigado for both all the Coimbra information and the other conversation as well. Our pleasure. It's what we do here. Let me see. Really love the there's been a bit of talking among you there. I believe so that people grow food in Wales, but people who live in the city may not have this possibility, of course, and that is a phenomenon we recognise in Portugal, of course, the country folk of Portugal. And I see them, you know, the 70 and 80 and possibly 90-year-olds bent double in their gardens, growing calda verde and you know, tending to an allotment. I love that part of Portuguese life, and obviously with the modern way, with, you know, the sort of neoliberal capitalism, people have left that behind them, and they see it as the old way, don't they? And they're all in the city now, and they buy everything from the supermarket. That is the way of the modern world. And what's so wonderful about Portugal, I think, is that those two worlds still overlap. There are, you know, in the UK where I'm from, I think people have, you know, you show some young people a vegetable that's just come out of the ground and they're horrified that it's ever been covered in mud. They just have never seen anything like that, and let alone know what to do with it. More intel coming in from Maria. You've been such great value tonight. I really appreciate your help here. Susan, this is for you. Tamar, town with about 40,000 inhabitants. It has a great monument, the Convent of Christ. That is wonderful. Took my mother there when she visited Portugal. She said it reminded her of her convent upbringing. The headquarters of the Knights Templar, of course, and a nice synagogue, yes, of course, that resisted for centuries, since the 15th century, especially in the time of the Inquisition. So, yes, historically rich Tamar. Very cool. And it's not Penamacor, it's Penacova, is where we have the beach by the Mondego River near Coimbra. Thank you for that, Maria. I thought you might be able to help us with that. The mask-wearing rules can be rather arbitrary, says Anne. Good evening to you, Anne. Thanks for joining us on YouTube tonight. I don't know if that's a comment about well, I guess that will be a comment about masks generally, wouldn't it, around the world, and people's fatigue with this, and or people's whatever reason it is for not doing it. Yes, this is where we're at. How do we deal with the fatigue? How do we deal with the societal costs? You know, with people losing their jobs and their livelihoods by being locked down. These are some, to me, this is the elephant in the room stuff. You know, we on one level, we've got the restrictions and measures that are the first aid, the emergency part of the situation. But how, as a group of people, including the politicians, you know, we, in that sense, we're all in this together, aren't we? We're all human beings. How are we going to cope with the aftermath and the result of all of this? These are going to be some interesting years ahead of us, I think. And I think Portugal is a good place to be, I have to say, in that regard. I don't know what you think, Jacqueline.
I think Portugal's a wonderful place to be right now. And, you know, I think they're pretty sensible and they've got a good reputation. It's a lovely country. And they're also... you know, they do celebrate their freedom too, because of it's not so long in their history since they were under dictatorship. And I've been looking this week at all the different types of governments there are in the world, and I don't know why people have so much resistance to God's government, but
that's your favorite system, isn't it?
That's my favorite system. It is. Yeah. You know, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's only he that knows the big picture. So maybe he could help us deal with the elephant in the room, as you so put it, because he knows the end from the beginning. And it is a government. It's a kingdom. It's not a religion. And the Bible's the sort of constitution, really, of that government.
Well, a fabulous way of looking at it. Can't wait to get there, says Eric. My wife and I are currently considering Porto, Lisboa and Coimbra. So we haven't talked about Lisbon tonight. Lisbon speaks for itself, though, of course, Eric. I have lived south of the water there in Almada, looking at Lisbon, and I had a great time. We had a wonderful year and worked in Lisbon too. You won't be disappointed being in Lisbon. But I guess it's all a matter of getting a balance of, the sort of life you want. If you love the city buzz, there is no better city. It's among the top cities in the world for that wonderful city buzz, and all that's best about city living is Lisbon. You will not be disappointed. And I think you've heard our views on Porto and Coimbra. So this is what I say to people: come and have a look when you can. Obviously, sorry to say that, because obviously you can't at the moment. But to me, the best thing is to have if your circumstances allow it, is to have a wander around. It's not a massive country. It's not as big as in any way. There's one of the states of the United States that's pretty much the same size as Portugal. And I heard a lawyer that I was interviewing the other day say, you can pretty much go from top to bottom in a day. So nothing's too far in Portugal. It is a lovely country to tour, and you'll get a sense of all these places if your circumstances allow, and you can have a little tour around the place and experience them all and enjoy the merits of each of these places. That's why I would suggest the Coimbra Fado, says Maria, is different from the Fado. And I was stirring up the Fado controversy there. Let's see what happens here. In Coimbra, only men sing Fado. Interesting, because of the love serenades dedicated to women by the students. It's more lyrical than the Lisbon Fado. And during the dictatorship, the Fado gained a political function against the regime. So I guess he wasn't too popular. Yes, because I guess that's why Amalia is such a folk hero, the queen of Fado, right? And Salazar was not at all keen on her, was he? We are hearing from the front line of Wales now. This is the great thing. This is a message big enough to hide us both for a moment, Jacqueline. Evening, Carl and Dona Jacqueline. Just for the record, Wales is currently in a firebreak lockdown for 2.5 weeks. Thank you for this information from the horse's mouth. Supermarkets and pharmacies open. Non-essential shops, bars, restaurants, etc. are closed unless for takeaway. No problems with food yet. So, yes, people aren't starving because of Brexit in Wales. Come on, Portuguese TV. There was a Tesco that closed its beauty aisle, and someone complained on Twitter that they couldn't buy sanitary products, and Tesco said, sorry, these are not on the essential list. Later apologised as they got it wrong. Lots of love to you, Jay, over there in Wales, and I hope that doesn't cause you too much difficulty. Can't wait to get there. We've done that one, Eric. Indiana, randomly there from Neonix Guru. Thanks for all the feedback, says Eric. We are hoping, what else can you do at the moment? Hoping and praying to spend a few weeks there in 2021. And that's our collective prayer here on the Portugal show on a Tuesday night, is that you can do exactly that, Eric. Fingers crossed for you. Oh, okay. Thank you, Neonix Guru. Yes, Indiana is pretty much the same size. Sorry, I didn't understand that reference. I do completely now, and thank you for saying it. Indiana pretty much the same size as Portugal, to give you an idea of the scale of this marvelous country. We are at that time, Dona Jacqueline, where it is your place. The mic is yours. With any reflection for the week ahead or the week that's gone past?
Well, I was just thinking actually about coming to Portugal originally for us, and we had an awful lot of problems, but I think what I would have loved to have done, looking back, was to have one of those massive sort of camping type things and toured around and really got to know the places and spent a bit of time. But when we went to other countries, perhaps my husband and I spent some time in Australia, about 3 or 4 months. We used to go to all the estate agents and get them to take us around. We actually nearly bought property there, but I thought that was great fun of way of seeing, and they were always willing to tell you about the way of life and got to know the culture. So all these people coming to Portugal, I think there's so many treats here. It would be quite hard decision now for me to know where I would like to be. Though I love it where I am.
Yeah, and that is Silver Coast, Caldas de Reina area, which is certainly worth a look. You were saying that it can be a little bit damp, but you might expect that given the proximity of the Atlantic. This is where you can be close to Nazaré, Peniche, Óbidos, Alcobaça, San Martinho de Porto, some amazing places on that coast. It really is fabulous. I love the town of Caldas de Reina as well. I think it's pretty special.
Yeah, I enjoy it. So
Well, Donna Jacqueline, I'm thinking we should perhaps launch a crowdfunder because you said you would have liked to have toured around in an RV or a bus or something like that when you first came to Portugal, and now it looks like you want to do it again. So we need to maybe launch a crowdfunder to get the Donna Jacqueline tour bus in order, and people can join us for various parts of this tour of Portugal.
Yeah, that would
Can
be
I
fun.
drive it?
Yeah, great, Carl. We'll go on a tour together, and we'll have I don't know, some way of sanitizing everything, so we're allowed to go from one city to another. Perhaps we can invent a sort of envelope that we can pass through and decovoid ourselves.
Well, you know that is being developed at the moment, and all the technology and investment will be going into solutions around this stuff because all the entrepreneurs will be seeing an angle there. Disaster capitalism, I think it's called, isn't it? But Susan's going to join us, so I think this idea. I was going to say it's got legs, it's got wheels, and we can have this sort of tour.
I want one that has got legs because my legs don't work that much.
Yeah, you're right. Well, technology is also available to augment that and make this a fun trip for us. Thanks, Carl and Donna Jacqueline. Another great show. No Facebook. So glad I can now comment on YouTube. That's fantastic, Eric. And I'm glad this is working out for people that they can join us on YouTube. Amazing technology. Very grateful for how we're able to do this, really. It's quite amazing to talk to you, our friends in America. And Maria, thank you so much, especially for your help here tonight as a Portuguese person, singing the praises and giving the statistics of your wonderful country. So thanks all for tuning in, and thanks especially to you, Donna Jacqueline. And we'll be back here again next Tuesday, won't we, with an election flavour?
Yes, but you just gave me an idea there.
Go on.
To maybe just end on is that maybe that's what we should be doing, is concentrating on what our vision for the future is, keeping that in mind. And I will give you a Bible quote that says, "Without a vision, the people perish."
Yes.
And we've got to have something to go for. And it's amazing that sometimes when you speak out of vision, people like yourself, which you just did about getting a bus and going around Portugal. I don't know how serious you are, but it could be made to happen, I'm sure.
I'm well up for it.
And so I really would like to finish on that. Just don't look so much at what we can't have right now, but have a vision and see how you can get there, because it needs that. We can't lose that. We can't, because that's also hope. And hopelessness is just a terrible state, and it accounts for more deaths than anything, because people commit suicide when they have no hope. So get a vision of what you really want, and we'll all go for it.
And cherish it, absolutely. And yeah, share your visions with us on the that will be a great theme for the sharing our visions. We are getting more questions coming. I think we're going to conclude there. But this will be a good one. Thanks, Sally. Please say something around Fundão history of agriculture and farm and property sales. Fundão it hasn't been mentioned so far, but I've got friends over that way, and it is another beautiful part of this country in the Castelo Branco district. So there is a lot to say about that. Too much to say to begin right now, Sally, but join us on the expatsportugal.com forum. Ask that same question over there on expatsportugal.com on the forum, and I'm sure you'll get a few people chipping in. And I've just realized what I've been saying in the Noi Unix Guru. That's obviously New York Unix Guru, right? As a moniker. So sorry for making such a mess of that before. Hope you forgive me, New York Unix Guru. And Maria, let's go. Final word from Maria, then. And thank you so much, Donna Jacqueline, for this reminding us about the importance of vision. You're welcome, says Maria. Loved your program. I live in the center of Portugal, born on Madeira Island. Wow, I was talking about the rum from Madeira this morning and the lovely ponchas that you can drink there. Portugal is a small country, but with a rich culture, wonderful food and wine, and a rich landscape. Yeah, wonderful food and wine and a rich landscape. That's enough to be going on with, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Maria. Thank you, Dona Jacqueline. We'll see you all soon, either in the morning or yes, morning and evening we're here. But Dona Jacqueline will be back here again next Tuesday evening. Take care. Bye for now, everybody. Ciao, ciao.
Bye, everyone.